And we begin. So I recently finished watching the second season of my all-time favorite show of all time, Legion, on FX. And in the show, I'm not going to be able to do it justice. They do it way more amazing than me, but I'm going to try anyways. They talk about Plato's allegory the allegory of Plato's cave. And the allegory of Plato's cave has to do with psychological projection. So in essence, this will be a continuation of the last video in that I'm going to be talking about screens a lot in relation to the idea of psychological projection and how they affect our psychology and how we interact with the world around us, or as I like to call it, reality. And the idea of Plato's allegory is that you have a group of people who have been raised in a cave. Their whole life has been inside this cave. They know nothing else. They started there. They don't have an awareness of anything outside of this cave because how could they? They haven't experienced or interacted or have any reason to believe that there is anything outside of this cave. They can't even think, oh, I'm in a cave, because they don't know that in order to have the idea that I'm in a cave, you need to have something to compare it to. But because they don't have awareness of anything besides the cave, they don't know that there even is a cave that they're in. Kind of like a fish doesn't know it's inside water. It's everything it's ever experienced, so it doesn't know that there's an experience happening beyond what they're experiencing, in a sense. Or the simple way to say it is unawareness. To not be able to be aware. Like you're not even able to think of something because you don't even have the emotional nervous system awareness to then formulate thoughts about the thing. To you, there is no thing. That's not the allegory, that's just an explanation. Anyways, so these people raised in the cave are then watching shadows of the outside world. So what happens is the entrance of the cave is behind them, so that when things walk past this entrance, the light of the sun projects their shadow onto the wall of the cave in front of these people. In the actual allegory, they're tied and bound, which is why they can't like turn around like, oh cool, what's that? So they're watching the world on this screen. Remember, we talked about screens last time. And to them, that is reality, because that is all they know. They don't know that that is a projection of something else, that is an aspect of something else. To them, that is everything. And they watch the whole world play out. They watch, as in the show, they show, a man evolving from monkey into a smarter monkey, and then smart monkeys waging war and building agriculture, falling in love and collapse of civilization, all that jazz. And to them, the screen's the only thing that exists. And if you were to enter this cave, a non-cave dweller, and you were to find all these people and you'd be like horrified, like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people? Don't worry, I'll save you. And you tell them about the outside world, they're gonna look at you like you're insane and you're the crazy person who needs rescuing, because they're not capable. And if you were to pull them outside and be like, no, look, I'll show you, they simply would not be able to comprehend it. They would not be able to compute what's happening because they have nothing prior to, they don't even have the nervous system to be able to receive that information, let alone they can receive it, but it won't make sense. They won't be able to make sense of it. Anyways, so the point of the idea is that this is a metaphor, or what I believe Plato was trying to say is that this is a metaphor for reality itself. That we humans think we perceive reality as it is, but in actual fact, we perceive shadows on a screen wall, and we don't see reality as it is. Now, not to say that we can't see reality as it is, however, this is not a given. We don't start off that way. Through training and practice, which is what multiple spiritual traditions throughout the world are about, you are able to perceive ultimate actual reality. But up until that point, if you do not actively engage in this and actively pursue it, you are not dealing with reality, you are dealing with projections. Projections of what? In this case, the light from the sun into the cave is actually the projection of our mind, our thoughts and emotions, out around us onto the outside world, like we're walking around in a 360 holographic bubble. Which technically we are anyways, but that's a video for another time. And so this has to do with a lot of ideas I try to convey, especially around psychological projection. And the thing that always gets me about society is that humans as a whole and not just modern humans, but although we can extend the word modern, and I do sometimes, from like really the beginning of the Common Era to now, we believe we understand reality. We believe we are aware of the world around us because we can manipulate it through tools and construction, because we can control certain aspects of nature through agricultural and industry. We believe we have an understanding, not complete, but a good enough working model that we know what reality is. And it's like, no, I of course I know what reality is, because I can unlock my gate. I know what a gate is. I know how it works. And this is what the idea that I try to express, as well as many others, as well as even all the way since the beginning, since Plato, is the idea that, like, that's not awareness. When we're talking about self-awareness, we're not talking about the thoughts in our head and the mind and the personality we have come to identify with. And we're talking about the difference between self-awareness and unawareness is the definition of, well, what do we call the self? If we call the self the mind, and yeah, okay, we're self-aware. However, reality itself contradicts this, because if we were self-aware, we would be able to manipulate the world around us because we understand it, right? But as we've seen as a species on this planet, with the collapsing environment as well as collapsing, social condition, we don't understand the world as we thought we did, because if we did, then we wouldn't be in this situation. We would be in harmony with our planet as opposed to against it, believing that nature is separate from us. So this is proof that, we don't understand reality like we thought we did. Now, this creates a situation, on a more individual level, this creates a situation called cognitive dissonance, where my expectations, my understanding, and then therefore expectations of reality do not match up with reality itself. So I go out into the world, I have this understanding that I formulate a mental model, and then I behave according to this mental model, and then reality reciprocates and is alignment with me and goes along with me because I've understood reality, and therefore I can make that connection and reach that mid-ground. Or it does not. I expect reality to behave this way, but it behaves a completely different way. And this creates a dissonance where our understanding of reality is not matching up with reality, and we create a new increased awareness of, like, I don't understand what's happening right now. Now, this is a very painful experience, physically, emotionally, all around, just awful, because it leads to the notion of, if I don't understand reality, then I'm insane, or am I insane? And the idea of potentially being insane, especially in the modern understanding of it, is horrifying and painful, because if I'm insane, then it means I don't understand the world around me. And if I don't understand the world around me, then I can't protect myself from it, and thus leads to the fear of death. If I can't protect myself, then it's going to kill me, and I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's why powerlessness is terrifying, because there's nothing I can do about it, and it's going to kill me, and there's nothing I can do about it. So that's why cognitive dissonance is painful. And this is why humans take so long to grow. Because unlike most animals, I'm not going to say all animals, because I don't know that, but like most animals, we're not born understanding reality. We're not born with the tool set we need in order to survive. A spider web is born knowing how to spin webs. Like, it doesn't have to teach it, there's no mom or dad around. In the insect world, usually parents just die when the parents are born, when the kids are born, or whatever. And, so, and even in more complex mammals, like a baby deer is just like dropped. Like the mother deer doesn't even get down, just dropped, and then just gets up and knows how to walk. Like babies don't do that. You drop a baby, we all know why that's a bad thing, or at least you should. Don't drop babies. And humans have to be taught, and a large part of that process is our reality checks and coalescing with the world around us and understanding and increasing our level of awareness, usually hopefully in a safe and comforting setting where this is encouraged. Unfortunately, modern society doesn't encourage this because of capitalism, among other things. Because, especially governance, at least modern governance, where a governing body, it's in the best interest of the governing body for you not to have an understanding of reality, because then you can't negate the government when it says, hey, do this because I said so, and you go, okay, sure. You can't go like, no, that's a bad idea, Because if you don't know why that's a bad idea, or that there's even a possibility of any other idea besides that, then you just do what you're told, right? So, thus, behold modern politics, or whatever. Not just modern, obviously, but you get the idea. So then, ultimately, so that's cognitive dissonance, and cognitive dissonance is painful, and pain is automatic. When we feel it, you touch a stove, you don't leave it there, you remove your hand, it's automatic, you don't think of it. Why? Because avoiding pain is usually, not always, but usually a very good survival mechanism. It's ingrained into our very DNA, as it should. However, we've learned and evolved over time that realize sometimes following your instincts, or maybe not instincts is the best word, but corporeal urges, is not always appropriate. Not to say that it's like evil and sinful and always inappropriate. That's also not true. Either extreme is bad. But yeah, we've evolved the prefrontal cortex to be like, oh, I'm hungry now, but this is really not a good time to like just drop everything. I'm in the middle of this exam. This exam is important to my life. I need to negate this physical experience so I can focus on a larger picture. I don't like these people, but I'm hungry and I need to hunt that mammoth. I'm going to negate my dislike of this person because it's really not that big of a deal. I just don't like the ways his nose hairs wrinkle, And I'm going to work with the nose hair guy and these other people who also might have nose hair, who knows. And we're going to hunt this mammoth. And, in the long run, that wasn't so bad. I got food, I got wool. I don't have to see this guy all the time, maybe not so bad. Also, discomfort is how you learn, so kind of actively seeking out, not painful experience, but like discomfort experience, like going outside your comfort zone, usually, not always, obviously because there are no absolutes besides change, but usually is a healthy thing. It teaches you, it expands your awareness of the world around you, and that's ultimately what this is all about, is awareness expansion. Because only when you expand your awareness can you understand what that awareness is of. If you don't have awareness, then you don't know what you're dealing with. So when somebody tells you, hey, do this, you can't go, why? Because you don't even have the awareness or the ability to ask why. So then this all relates back to screens. This is Screens 2.0. And the idea and what happens with screens. And, screens goes back to all the way to hieroglyphs. Whenever we had a flat surface that we wanted to use to communicate, that technically is a screen. But obviously my focus is more on technological screens, cameras, phones, TV, internet, social media, all these doohickeys, and the way we use them to communicate. Now, communicating through a screen isn't inherently destructive. Obviously, there's examples where this is a good thing. I became a filmmaker and decided to become a filmmaker because I would go to the movies and had beautiful experiences watching films. I would feel things I normally wouldn't have access to in my normal life. I was exposed to worlds I didn't know existed because I saw a screen. However, the problem is when the screen, this two-dimensional object, tries to convince you that it's not a screen, that it's not a two-dimensional object, and that it is reality, that this screen is more real than the thing itself. Also keep in mind that we are not aware that this is happening. This is happening on a subconscious level, on an emotional level. Another reason to be aware of your emotions. If you're not aware of your emotions, then that means other people can manipulate it, or other things. And this comes down to the idea, I was talking to somebody about this, and it was elaborating off my last video, where I'm realizing, or I'm recognizing it, behaviors in people of, the first thing you need to understand is screens are one way. Even if it's an interactive screen, it's still one way. It's communicating at you. You can't disagree with the screen because there's nothing to disagree with. And because of this, we become passive. So we watch TV or we watch a screen and we become passive where we're only listening. Maybe not always. And you can yell and talk back to the screen, but that's not going to change what's on the screen. And two things happen, or one of the most important things is, what ends up happening is that the screen programs us. And you need to understand that humans think of themselves as these mental, intellectual, rational beings. We're not. We're animals, and animals are emotions. And when we make decisions, or when we, when we are developed or created in this world, it comes from an emotional level. And if we're not aware of those emotions, then we're not in control of it. So when you watch a screen, it's manipulating you emotionally. And then you have like rational thoughts to justify why you're behaving this way or why this is meaningful to you. But really the thoughts don't come first. We think they do. And that's the danger, is that we think, oh, I have a good reason for why I think this way. And the first problem is, well, you don't think that way. You feel that way, and then you made up thoughts to justify that feeling. I apologize to British people. I didn't mean that. So we have feelings. We base our decisions off feelings, and then we explain it with thoughts. So when you're watching a screen and it's affecting you emotionally, what ends up happening is that the screen is programming you on an emotional level. Screens program how you feel, and therefore, since thoughts follow feelings, how you think as well. And if you don't have the skill set of awareness, remember, this is a skill set you must learn and practice. It is not a given. It is not just, a standard issue when when you fall out of the womb, because of course you don't fall out of the womb. It's not given to you. We believe it is, and we're taught that, oh, you're a human and you've had an education, so you have awareness. It's like, no. This is an after-school activity. You need to go the extra step. This is not being taught in our schools, unfortunately. Emotional awareness and management, yeah, that should be like curriculum 101 throughout the entire thing, like from like pre-K into college. Honestly, even PhD. Honestly, like just never stop working on emotional awareness. Anyways, I digress. So what I've noticed is that because we spend so much time surrounded by screens, and also because screens are one way, they also make us feel safe, because we get to choose what's on the screen. We get to choose what we watch, and we get to choose that it agrees with us. Especially nowadays with algorithms, it's just showing us stuff that we like, because that's what makes money, and that's what sales and marketing people are interested in. They don't care about your well-being, and maybe they do, but it's always second priority. The first priority in capitalism is always make more money than you did yesterday. Even if the company or the group of people are well-being and genuinely altruistic, it doesn't matter, because they still need to make money in order to achieve those altruistic goals. So the bottom line is always make more money than you did yesterday. So no matter what you see on a screen, it's there to make you happy, because if you're happy, you'll keep watching. And if you like what you're watching, please click subscribe and follow and comment and all that stuff. I'm kidding. What ends up happening is you create a echo chamber, or even more accurately, a mirror. Thus that show, Black Mirror, but it was, from a more cynical bent. But essentially, yeah, what you end up watching is just stuff that makes you feel good, and you're only gonna watch stuff that makes you feel good. Usually. Obviously, people who develop their skill set be like, you know what, I'm interested in, let me watch something spooky. It's not my usual thing, but I wanna learn something new. I wanna have a new experience so I can learn from it. I don't necessarily, me for example, I don't like horror movies. They freak me out. But if it's a really good horror movie and the filmmaking's amazing and the writing's awesome, I'm probably gonna dig it every now and then. And want a new experience, I'm like, alright, I'll try this one. Especially if it's sci-fi horror. The minute you put sci-fi in it, I'm all about it, and I'm no longer scared of everything. Alien is one of my favorite all-time movies. But the problem is that we don't have a self-aware populace. And when I talk about self-awareness, I'm talking about emotional awareness. Yes, that is changing. Yes, that is growing, but not to the extent that I believe it should. And what I mean by that is the extent by which we can shape and destroy the world around us is exponentially larger than the emotional maturity needed in order to deal with those technologies and abilities that we have. We're a toddler with a bazooka. And that's terrifying, right? Because toddlers should not have any form of weaponry, let alone a bazooka. What ends up happening is that we're dealing with most people who are unaware of how the screen affects their emotional level. So when they're watching TV, they go, oh, these shadows are all I know. This is reality. And it programs their expectations of the world around them, so that they then go out into the actual world around them and they behave and respond to reality the way they saw on TV and the way they saw on social media. And they start talking like what they've seen, because that's what's kind of trained them of how to interact with the world. And so they interact with other people in the world around them as if they're the people in the world that they see on TV. But of course, they're not. And nothing can replace reality, and because TV is a fantasy. And also, it's a fantasy created by a human mind, so it will always fall short. So they go out into the world, expect reality to behave like they saw on their screen, and then it doesn't, and that creates a massive cognitive dissonance, especially if you spend a significant amount of time in front of the screen, which most modern humans do because of the advent of social media and screens on everything down to your wristwatch. Like, come on, you know? And that freaks us out, because then that raises the question, wait a minute, can I understand reality? Can I understand interacting with other humans? Those are terrifying concepts, especially the awareness of like, oh no, I can't. I don't know how to interact with other humans. And for most people, especially in modern Western cultures, the emphasis is on when we feel afraid, when we feel scared and in pain, these are painful experiences, our immediate reaction is to blame the other, to blame the outside force. I'm not feeling this way. They're making me feel this way. And because they're making me feel this way and I feel threatened, I have every right to assault and attack this thing that's making me feel threatened. The problem is, the experience of feeling threatened is an illusion. It's not happening. You bumped up against reality, and reality said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't work that way. And you go, why not? You should work the way I want you to work. But of course, that doesn't make sense. Reality is not supposed to conform to your expectations. You're supposed to conform to reality. And I don't mean reality that other humans tell you. I mean like nature, reality. If the sky goes away, we die. If the stock market goes away, humans get really upset and maybe die. But the rest of the world is like, oh, we're good, thanks. The idea being that, yes, we are ultimately delusional. If our expectations are formed from an illusional media, which is the screen, without us knowing that it's illusional, and that is, illusory is the word, forgive me, that ultimately the screen can teach us, yes, but it cannot teach us enough or significantly, and it cannot be our only source of education. You can think of like certain sci-fi stories where a person's raised in a virtual reality and then exposed to reality, and the idea is like, oh, well, if the reality is good enough, it's like, no. No matter, how far you go, the virtual reality will never compare or be able to replace the physical world, because if it did, why would we need the physical world to begin with? But then it goes into simulation theory and holographic theory and whatever, but that's, like I said, a video for another time. So, people dealing with reality as if it's supposed to behave like TV. And what I would say here is, one, don't freak out. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. Adjustments are supposed to be made to your expectations and your understanding of reality. And most important of all, there is no shame in making mistakes. There is no shame in getting things wrong, because you're supposed to get things wrong. You're supposed to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Unfortunately, we don't live in a culture that raises us with this understanding, and which is a healthy understanding, and tells us that we deserve to be shamed and humiliated for our ignorance. But what is ignorance? Ignorance is not the purposeful lack of knowledge. No, that's stupidity, I guess. Ignorance is the lack of access to knowledge. Like, if you were not given the capabilities to better yourself, it is not your fault that you haven't bettered yourself. And then you always hear the stories like, oh, the individual who is self-taught and rags to riches and made themselves, yeah, that sometimes happened. But one, that's a very small majority, and usually those people are kind of born with an extra gift to allow them to do that, so they, in a sense, they do have access. And two, society is not supposed to be where you have to struggle that much just to get the basic needs you need in order to survive. We should be encouraging people to want to learn and to make mistakes. And we should not live in a society where people need to demand the right to exist, because that's just not only illogical, but of course immoral. So yes, be comfortable with your mistakes. Be happy with them. Celebrate them. Talk to strangers. And it's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be weird. Unless you've been doing that your whole life, then it's not gonna be weird. But be okay in not being okay. Be okay in not being being uncomfortable. Because uncomfortable is where you learn. We're not talking about pain. Remember, either extreme is not good. But in that middle, and you just go a little bit to the other side, a little to the side you haven't been yet, this is where learning happens. And learning never ends. You're supposed to constantly challenge yourself. And ultimately, when you get used to the idea that the other is not what you think it is. The fears that you have of the outside world around you have nothing to do with the outside world around you, and really have to do with your internal life, your internal emotional structure. And when you get that awareness, which is a major reason we focus so much on building our awareness, and you get to that point where you go, oh, all these thoughts and expectations, all my negative and fearful assumptions were never about the world around me, but about me, myself, and what I expected and what I'm afraid of. And when you sit with your fear and your negative expectations without shame or judgment, and you listen like, well, I'm afraid of this because it's scary and it hurts and I think I might die from it. And then you sit with those thoughts a lot and you increase awareness and you accept, your unavoidable mortality, which is the booyah, see? Which is ultimately what all humans need to do in order to grow, and in my personal opinion, need to be fully mature. Then you accept and are comfortable with the unknown. Then you realize the unknown is not a threat. Sometimes it can be, sure, but ultimately it's the things you know that are more threatening to you, usually. But the unknown is also a great source of awe and inspiration and wonder, and can lead to joys and experiences you didn't even know were possible. So I beseech you, take a chance and do something that makes you a little uncomfortable, but is also kind of cool. Thanks, team.